Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayerStoo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayerStoo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayerStoo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, it just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely does mean a lot. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Going very well, Mark. How you doing?
Not bad at all. Last week, Lewis, we didn't have a podcast, and the reason for that is because all my plumbing stopped working. It was very unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen. I can only apologise. We actually had a podcast recorded. However, due to the topical nature of the PlayerStoo Podcast, it knocked our whole editing cycle out, and it would have just been pointless to put it out. But we discussed the fact that PlayStation reversed their decision on the PlayStation Vita and PS3 stores, and they're now going to stay open, which is great. We discussed that Amazon have unfortunately had to cancel their Lord of the Rings MMO due to a dispute with Tencent, which is very dumb. We discussed that the Celeste developers will be releasing a new game and released a little teaser trailer, which was pretty cool. We discussed a little bit that Days Gone is coming to PC, which is a very good thing. But we also discussed that the game director of Days Gone said a bunch of very dumb things indeed. So that is what you missed, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, that podcast will never see the light of day and has lost the time. But we are back. I have to say, Lewis, I am mortified, frankly, that we hadn't missed a week ever unless it was planned, basically, up until very recently when I was ill and then my plumbing exploded, and it feels as if I've missed 2 back-to-back in a very short space of time. I would just like to assure everyone that this is not indicative of anything and everything will be fine going forward. Touch wood.
Yeah, you just jinxed us both there.
No, it will all be fine. It will all be fine.
Yeah. Things are as busy and as chaotic as ever for us, but yeah, it's just been a series of bad incidences and nothing more substantial than that. So
absolutely not.
And you've just proven we can do this show in about a minute and a half, the way you just summed up what everyone missed. So
well, the discussion's the good bit.
Right,
the discussion's the good bit. I can't just read out all the headlines. That's boring. Anyway, Liz. What have you been playing this week?
Well, Mark, this week, and actually last week, as no one would have heard except you, I thought I would be finished Oddworld Soulstorm by now. And I'm not quite finished Oddworld Soulstorm yet. Partly because it's been very good weather here in Glasgow again, and I've spent a lot of my free time outside and not playing anything at all.
It is an extremely rare day that it's very sunny here, it has to be pointed out. Lewis can be forgiven for this.
It's just too much. The pressure that you sometimes feel to go outside on that rare day is pretty intense. So I did think about taking my Switch up to the park and just kind of doing something there, but I'm not playing anything on the Switch, so I never got around to that. But yeah, I have made progress with Soulstorm. I am on the very last scene, I guess, of the penultimate level before it will tell me whether or not I get the bonus levels. And the other reason, other than the good weather, that I've not finished this game yet is because it has some of the worst designed pieces of challenging gameplay that I have experienced in some time. There have been 2 parts in this one level that I'm in just now, Mark, oh my god, that are catastrophically badly made. There's nothing that I am doing wrong. I've even now watched a video of some other people playing it. There's nothing that I am doing wrong or differently from them, except that the aiming on PlayStation is terrible. It's so bad that I turned off the adaptive triggers because I felt like every time I was having to pull the right trigger down with that extra bit of weight that the adaptive triggers gives, it was making my aim on the right stick just go off. It is absurdly precise for a game that is not actually about shooting people at all. I mean, if anyone remembers back to my initial statements on the game, I've had a really mixed time with it. There are parts of it that I've really enjoyed, and there's some really good puzzle sections and some really satisfying moments when you liberate, 11 Mudokons at once and you've taken them through some really tricky sections. But there are just other bits of it that feel undercooked, that feel like they haven't even been tested properly. again, like, it's just quite shallow in terms of how it's telling its story, and basically in quite a lot of the things that you would want Oddworld to be, or that I would want it to be. And I actually said out loud for the first time the other day, I think I did say it on here before, but I hadn't ever allowed myself to say it while playing, which was that if this wasn't an Oddworld game, I might have given up on it by now, and I still feel that way. Yeah.
God, yeah, that is a bit sad to hear, man, I've got to say, because Oddworld's awesome and I love Oddworld. Yeah, that is pretty disappointing to hear, I've got to say. And I know that you love it just as much as me, if not more than me, so...
Yeah, I mean, I guess bear that in mind, that I went into this with, I don't want to say high expectations, because I was never really too sure what to expect, but I guess with high hopes, and those haven't quite been met. But in saying that, you know, I've played the vast majority of the game. I am going to finish it. There have been things that I've enjoyed about it, and it has been free on PS Plus. So, I mean, if you're there on PS5 and you can download it, and if you've got a history with the game, check it out. But honestly, Mark, it feels to me like it just needs like 2 or 3 fairly decent patches to tidy up some of the stuff in it that isn't quite right, and then it might be the perfect experience.
I think previously we had said on this, because still looking back at those trailers and thinking back to those trailers, I was just thinking, God, this looks absolutely fantastic. Yeah. And at that time, we were saying, don't sleep on this. But in actual fact, if people missed this game, would that be fine, basically?
I think, yeah, like really, unless you've got a long-standing history with Oddworld and you feel like you really want to see this, I don't think that you're missing much by not playing it, if I'm honest.
Man, that is really sad to hear. I'm still definitely going to play it. Again, basically just because of that history that we just talked about. We've played these games a lot as kids and whatever, and yeah, I just want to go back and play it. And that's all there is to it, basically.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely, yeah. Anyway, Mark, what have you been playing?
Well, Lewis, last week I was taking a bit of a break. I was actually playing 2 mobile games. I was playing Monument Valley for the first time, which I have now completed, and I've completed all the little extra puzzles and whatever that they'd put into the game for Apple Arcade. Man, that is a brilliant game. Like, I don't even care that that's a mobile game. That is a superb little game. It is so well put together. I loved it so much. If you have Apple Arcade, or even if you're just looking for something to play on your mobile phone, that's a pretty straightforward puzzler, but just has a lot of charm about it. It's really, really a beautiful game. I totally fell in love with it, to be honest with you. I downloaded it to play it, not really expecting very much, because I'd never really expected very much from Monument Valley, and that is why I hadn't played it up until now. But man, it's great. It really is fantastic. And I was playing Fantasian as well, which is the new game from a whole bunch of Final Fantasy veterans, basically, that have put this game together. And again, it played really, really great. I've actually not played it anymore since last week, but it's really, really good, and it works really well on the phone, and it does bring that sort of Final Fantasy-esque menu-based combat to a mobile in quite a nice way, to be honest with you, that doesn't feel cumbersome. It just sort of works, you know. That's what I kept on saying last week, which again nobody would have heard, and I swear we will stop referencing it soon. But it just sort of works, like it really does. And if you're interested in Final Fantasy, or you like Final Fantasy, and you do have an Apple Arcade subscription, like, give it a go. It really is good. But Lewis, what I have actually been playing this week is Resident Evil 7.
Nice.
This in preparation for Resident Evil Village, which is coming out very, very shortly indeed. Lewis, it's fantastic. I'm just going to say it. It's absolutely fantastic. I feel a fool, Lewis, that I have not played it up until this point. It is extremely tense, I will say that. Extremely, extremely tense. It does not rely on jump scares or anything like that to make it scary. It just has this overwhelming tension about it, which I sort of do associate with Resident Evil games. I don't mind to change to first person at all. I actually think it probably leans into that tension more that way. And I actually think that first person probably works quite well for horror games in general, because things are very close to the screen, basically. Despite the fact that they've changed a lot about this game, like they really have changed a lot about Resident Evil 7, from specifically thinking back to like Resident Evil 4, but even before then they've changed it like a huge amount to me. It still feels like a Resident Evil game. Like, they still keep that DNA there. It's things like the puzzles and the fact that they've even kept like the herbs as healing items and stuff like that. There's just enough there that's familiar that makes it feel like a Resident Evil game, despite the fact that they actually have changed quite a lot. And the survival element of it all, they absolutely nail it. I don't know how the people at Capcom and the Resident Evil devs work this out, but you always have just enough of everything. You always have just enough health and just enough ammo to get through sections, you know? And that in and of itself means that you have to scavenge for those items, because you have to have them, or else you're not going to get through the next section, you know? It's just fantastic, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, and I would highly recommend anyone play it. And it's really got me quite excited for Resident Evil Village, to be honest.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, I've been looking forward to playing it. I've got it downloaded and installed at the moment on my PlayStation for the exact same reason that you've started playing it now, that I kind of want to get a run through before Village comes out. Well, tell me about the combat. How does that compare in first person compared to, I'm thinking specifically about Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes?
I mean, it's different. It is different. I'm not going to lie. I don't think that it's better or worse necessarily. It's just different. It's just first person as opposed to third person, right? But all the weapons feel the same. I enjoyed the combat absolutely fine. I will say that melee combat in first person is never great, and there is a bit of that going on. But in terms of the gunplay and whatever, yeah, I mean, I'm not thinking at any point, oh, I wish this was still third person. You know what I mean? I never really thought like that at all.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm showing my own bias there that I much prefer third person to
I know
first.
You do, yeah. What I will say is that there is some hangovers from it being a VR title. That's what I'll say. There are some parts of it that I'm like, oh, this is here, or they're doing this thing in this way because this is a VR game.
That's really interesting.
But other than that, honestly, I think that they've nailed it. They really have. It's a great reboot to the series, a soft reboot to the series after 6, which went down like a fucking lead balloon.
Yeah.
This is a fantastic going back to your roots, going back to what made Resident Evil great. Yeah, you put it in first person, but everything else is there in terms of what made the series fantastic, you know?
Superb. How much have you got to play still?
Oh, very, very little. I'm like on the very last stretch. I've probably got about half an hour maybe left in the game. Like really not a lot at all. But man, it's been absolutely fantastic. You really definitely should play it, man, seriously, before Village comes out, because I am hyped a lot for Village now.
Nice. Good stuff, yeah.
Alright, Lewis, on that note, time for the news. Alright, news item number 1. PlayStation are set to roll movie content into the PlayStation Plus subscription list. A logo for PlayStation Plus Video Pass appeared on PlayStation's Polish website with a statement that read, "A new benefit available for a limited time on PlayStation Plus. PlayStation Plus Video Pass is available as a trial service active from the 22nd of April this year to the 22nd of April next year. The subscription benefit is available to PlayStation Plus users in Poland." I don't know what is so special about the people in Poland, but good for you, Poland. You're getting some free videos, it looks like. This was subsequently taken down, but PlayStation have now confirmed that Video Pass is a test service which they are trialling in Poland. This will allow PlayStation 4/5 users in Poland to access over 20 movies and TV shows lists from Sony Pictures. This will all be part of your PlayStation subscription, and there will be new content added every 3 months. Last month, Sony actually announced that the PlayStation Store would stop offering movies and TV shows for rental or purchase, and that change would come into effect on the 31st of August this year. Sony does have a considerable amount of TV and movie content which it could use to fill a service like this. However, when this news broke, I think that a lot of people thought that this was some response to Games Pass, but I actually only think that this is tangentially related to Games Pass. Basically, I think that Sony are trying to increase the value of the PlayStation Plus subscription. I think that part of the reason for that is because Microsoft are offering such an incredible deal over on their side, and Sony have this content available that they can leverage over Microsoft because this is something that they have that Microsoft don't. So I actually think that this is because Sony had removed the TV shows and movies from the PlayStation Store rather than it being some gamer-focused thing. Do you know what I mean? I think that this is just trying to add a bit of additional value basically to your subscription. Sony have tried to leverage their TV shows and movies since the PlayStation 3 basically, and haven't been very successful doing it so far, so I hope that this is better.
Yeah, I would agree 100% that this isn't really about competing with Game Pass, Mark, because it doesn't really make any sense as that, you know, if people are reading it that way, I don't know why anyone would think that Sony's answer to loads of games would be to throw a few TV series together. And yeah, I think it is exactly about that. It's about increasing the value of PlayStation Plus, I really hope that that is just added value, because this isn't something that I would be particularly keen on actually having to pay for. If this came along with a bump in the price of PlayStation Plus, I would be not up for that, because we've got enough services. And looking at the content that is on this Polish trial, it's not particularly great. There's a handful of decent things in it. It's not a particularly attractive thing, I don't think. But if it's just a nice little addition of a bunch of Sony content that they can give away, it doesn't look like it's necessarily going to be their newest films or their newest series. But, if you know that some of that stuff is going to come to your PlayStation eventually and you're not paying anything extra for it, then fair enough. That's good, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you can't really complain. I don't think that this is going to come with a price hike, because if it does come with a price hike, the backlash will be ungodly, I would say. And as well, you have to remember, in terms of the content that's going to be there in the beginning, this is just a trial in a very small region in reality, so it's not necessarily indicative of the final product. But if they do end up rolling this out, I would like to think that Sony would be supporting it with significantly more than over 20 films and TV shows. You know what I mean? I think I've got more on my fucking Netflix watch list than that, you know what I mean, from last week.
I mean, that's it. The level of competition that they would be up against here, if it was a more substantial thing, would just be not worth it. I mean, that is literally what they said, the reason for taking films and TV off of the platform anyway. They basically said, you're all using other services. So, as I say, if this is basically that when you log on to your PlayStation every so often, it'll say, here's this film that you might have heard of that you can check out, and it's all rolled in with what you've got, then fair enough, absolutely no complaints. But if there is any other changes to the costing, then I think there will be a backlash. People will basically refuse to pay that. It could even just be Sony testing out, their own ideas for a streaming platform for their wider content. That isn't something I don't think that Sony has at the moment, and you could see that that's the direction that the industry is going in, the film industry, the TV industry. So they might just be seeing, is there any interest in this, and what's the simplest way for us to put this out to people,
Yeah, they have actually signed a deal with Netflix very
that's
recently,
right, yeah.
But I believe that that's only in the US. I believe that only applies to streaming their films in the US, but obviously the US market is absolutely fucking gargantuan. So it's not necessarily clear how this would all tie into one another at this moment. So yeah, one to keep your eye on. Interesting, Lewis. Interesting is what I will say. Or it could be anyway. Alright, Lewis, news item number 2. PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan has said that they are devising a cloud gaming strategy that would be unique and only on PlayStation. PlayStation were actually the first to the streaming party back when they launched PlayStation Now in 2014. But after a pretty bad launch and, let's be honest, pretty bad support, they have subsequently been overtaken by basically everyone in this space, not least of which being Xbox with xCloud and Games Pass. However, in 2019, Sony made a deal with Microsoft for use of their Azure technology and data centers for cloud gaming, and I'm sure for other things. I think that was probably part of a much wider deal between Sony and Microsoft and not specific to Xbox and PlayStation, but it has allowed Sony to use that Microsoft technology for cloud gaming as well. All of this is basically stemming from an interview Jim Ryan had with Japanese website Nikkei, during which he made this statement.
We're still having conversations with Microsoft about exchanging ideas. We're still talking to them about exchanging ideas, and there's some very interesting stuff. So when the time is right, we'll announce our cloud strategy. We could conceivably use the cloud for our technical infrastructure, but the cloud gaming experience we're offering will be unique and only on PlayStation.
Also in this interview, when asked if the cloud gaming focus could interrupt the 6/7 year console cycle, he said that it was difficult to answer at this time, but maybe. Then it was suggested that an increased focus on cloud gaming could mean that the PlayStation 5 would be the last console for Sony, to which Jim Ryan said, "We have just released the PS5, so at this point it's time to learn how people are enjoying it, and then we'll take the time to think about the future of PlayStation." So basically saying, don't ask me these questions, we've just released a new console.
A console which most people still can't get their hands on, bear in mind.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. He also spoke a little bit about how the next-gen PSVR was going to be a big focus for them basically in this generation. And he also said that PlayStation are, quotes, quietly investing in PlayStation 5 exclusives. He said that the PlayStation 5 would, quotes, have more dedicated software than ever before, and that they wouldn't rule out other acquisitions in the future in terms of new studios and whatever. So, Lewis, I think that there is two things here. First and foremost, thoughts on all this cloud streaming stuff, and it seems as though PlayStation are ready to make a sort of second swing at this after PlayStation Now has not taken off in the way that, say, xCloud has.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's hard to really get a sense of what this could be. You know, if he's saying that this is...
I mean, it's going to be fucking xCloud, isn't it? I mean, they're saying it's going to be whatever and unique to PlayStation. It's going to be fucking xCloud. It's absolutely...
What would it, like, in terms of the background tech of it will be xCloud, you mean, right? It's not going to be this exact same service.
No. The background technology is going to be Azure.
Yeah.
Like, the service will be very similar to xCloud.
Yeah. The way he's dressing that up sounds like it'll be unique and only on PlayStation. It might simply mean because it'll be the only place where you can stream PlayStation exclusives, right? But it could mean something more exciting than that. I have just no idea. How many versions of this are there? Like, cloud gaming is basically getting games streamed to us. There's different payment models that we've seen Google try, and obviously Xbox have set up and Amazon are doing with Luna, but it's all the same idea, right? They would stream games to us. So I don't know what this could be that would be particularly exciting. What would your stance be on just PlayStation games being streamed? I guess that's a good thing if it works, right?
Well, if Sony can do the same thing that Xbox are doing with xCloud, then yeah, it's a good thing. I don't see it as the future quite yet. I see it the future long term when technology improves, particularly 5G is going to be a big thing to do with cloud gaming and streaming things to your devices and whatever, or I believe that anyway. I can see Lewis smirking on my fucking webcam.
I just wondered for how many
5G.
years you've said that now.
Well, the 5G rollout has been hindered somewhat by a global pandemic, Lewis, to be fair. But I do genuinely think that cloud gaming will have a serious impact on the future of gaming. I don't think that future is imminent necessarily, but I think maybe by the end of this generation it could be. But if Sony are in a position where they have a service similar to xCloud that works as well as xCloud has been working for Xbox, then yeah, thumbs up from me. Very good. Secondly, Lewis, doubling down on PlayStation exclusives seems to be what Jim Ryan is implying. Do you still think that's the way to go?
I think it's absolutely got to be for PlayStation at the moment, given that they are being beaten by Xbox in the service area. And
it's not even a competition.
I mean, it literally is not a competition between Game Pass and PlayStation Now at the moment. There is no real meaningful point of comparison there. I think that they have to. There's big questions there, obviously, and there always will be about, are exclusives good? You know, is it a good thing for business? Is it a good thing for consumers? There's been so much debate over that, even because of the Bethesda deal on the Xbox side that's brought all of that to light. But I think basically PlayStation doesn't have a choice right now. They have to pursue an aggressive exclusive strategy. PS4 showed them that if you get your exclusives right, fundamentally that was the making of that generation, and there's not really any reason to think that if they make unmissable games exclusively for their console this time, that still won't be the case.
Well, this is how Nintendo have lived and died for many generations, much longer than Xbox and PlayStation, you know?
Yeah, although I would be sad to see, as we kind of said when we were talking about all this before, I would be sad to see PlayStation go down the route of Nintendo and kind of lean on a couple of major IP and it become the machine that you have to buy in order to play, PlayStation's Mario, whatever that would be, The Last of Us or whatever.
What a stark difference that is. Mario versus Ellie.
But what a good fight it would be.
I think Mario could take her. Anyway, listen, that might tie nicely into news item number 3. PlayStation Studios boss Herman Hulst has said that Sony will continue to make, quotes, experimental games as well as blockbusters. So the narrative, as Lewis was just alluding to there, since Jason Schreier's piece about PlayStation came out a few weeks ago, is that PlayStation are abandoning smaller, weirder games basically in favour of these blockbuster titles. Your Gods of War, Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima now I think definitely qualifies. Which, to be honest with you, I thought was massively overblown even at the time. However, when asked about this, Hulst made this statement about PlayStation Studio games.
I think that the games that we make are as distinct and diverse as they can be. From Sackboy to Astrobot to Dreams to these kind of games that you're referring to, like The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. And you can bet that we will carry on making these games because they are the heart and soul of what we do here at PlayStation Studios. But at the same time, we're just as committed to making these quality experiences as we are to experimentation and to coming up with fresh ideas.
This has all basically come from the news that the first game from Firewalk Studios will be a PlayStation exclusive, and PlayStation have very recently announced that deal. This is the studio that is made up of a bunch of Bungie veterans, including Tony Hsu, who was the general manager and senior vice president of Destiny, Ryan Ellis, who was a creative director at Bungie, and Elena Sigmund, who was an executive producer at Bungie, Irrational Games and Harmonix. So, good pedigree here, I think we can say. The interesting thing about this game, though, is that it will be a AAA multiplayer game, which I suppose you would expect from a bunch of Bungie veterans, which is a bit of a departure from the usual PlayStation Studios narrative-focused games. But ultimately, I actually think that this is a good thing, potentially, like in that PlayStation and PlayStation Studios are diversifying a bit what their exclusives are or what their exclusives can be, and that they aren't just this one-note action-adventure, pretty serious, usually emotionally heavy story, you know what I mean? They can be other things, you know? It either seems to be that or Ratchet and Clank and Astrobot, you know, there's like no in between. Anyway, Liz, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that, you know, where you just left that there, because I think that there, even contained in this statement, there is a bit of truth in how people were reading Jason Schreier's article, which I think, by the way, Jason Schreier has come out since and said the reaction to that was a bit overblown. Yeah. So
it also wasn't the point he was making in the article, which is quite interesting. Yeah. Other people made this point about his article.
Well, it's the nature of publishing on the internet, isn't it? I mean, to start with, this new franchise, this new game from these Bungie veterans is great, and it is a bit of diversification, definitely. Although, as a multiplayer exclusive, is that really the best thing right now? We all know that putting multiplayer games across as many platforms as possible is really the way to build an audience.
Well, I have to say that this is a console exclusive, so it will still be on PC. Presumably, it will be cross-play with PC as well. So it's just a console exclusive for PlayStation, not a wholly exclusive for PlayStation.
I think the point still stands, but yeah.
But yeah. I take your point, though. More platforms, more players for multiplayer games, generally speaking, is better. Although, would Fall Guys say that being exclusive on PlayStation was so bad?
Certainly. You know? I mean, not for a whole year. They certainly wouldn't have done. And that's the thing. Like, obviously, if you then have an install base the size of PS4s, not to say that this will do whenever it comes, depends what the PS5 production is like at that point, I suppose. But you could absolutely argue that putting a multiplayer exclusive on PS4 would have been fine because there's 100 million players potentially that could have picked it up. And again, if they leverage PS Plus and they do all that stuff, like, there are ways to make it work. But the other side of the gamble for me really is that putting out a multiplayer game is a risk. You know, you can put out your highly polished story-driven games like God of War and The Last of Us, and you can rake in every 10 going and you know, become the most awarded game in history in the case of The Last of Us Part 2. But if they have server problems on day one for this game, it's going to reflect badly on PlayStation, because that's just how these things go, you know?
Yeah, I think they have to be clever about the rollout. I think that they have to do open beta. They have to do what Outriders have done, right? They have to do open betas. They have to make sure the servers are right. They have to get Twitch streamers involved. They have to do the whole 9 yards for what a launch of a good multiplayer game is these days, which is vastly different from launching The Last of Us Part 2. Yeah. They have to get that right, or you're right, this could easily flop. Yeah,
that's just something that they don't want on their record after quite a long period of really nailing it there. But overall, it is a diversification of the portfolio, as you were saying. It does bring something new. It is an indication that Herman Hulst is being genuine there, in that they are looking to support a whole bunch of different things. I mean, to me, again, the thing that slightly makes me go, ugh, is that it's another big AAA, you know, which I think is the thing that could be levelled at them just now, that even Returnal is a full price $70 game. And so I think that is part of people's concern from the collapse of Japan Studio, and some of the things that were coming out in Jason Schreier's article was just that it's still just these huge titanic games that are being made, and there's a lot less of the weird small strange things, because even the three games he mentions there, like Dreams, they didn't really support in any particularly big way. Astrobot was bundled in, and is Sackboy all that different from Astrobot? Probably not. So there's still not a huge variety at that smaller level, but they are really supporting third-party indies. You know, they're tying up a lot of marketing deals for those. So if that's the strategy, that's fair enough too.
Yeah, I suppose it ties back into Jim Ryan's comments as well in that interview, saying that they are quietly investing in these smaller titles. Because, I mean, just in the last few weeks, we've learned that Jade Raymond's new studio, Haven, the first game out of there is going to be a PlayStation console exclusive. We've got a teaser for Abandoned, which is from an absolutely minuscule Dutch studio that no one had ever heard of. And now we've got this from Firewalk Studios as well. So it's not as if they're not willing to take chances. I will say that if PlayStation is going to be publishing a game, I very much doubt that it will be anything less than full price. I'm not entirely sure that hasn't been the case for quite a while now, to be totally honest. I don't know how much Sackboy goes for.
I think that and things like Dreams were a bit cheaper to begin with, but yeah, I wouldn't die on that hill. Returnal looks like it's going to merit that, so that's fine, but it's just that there's not a lot of variety there in terms of, the scale of projects that they're putting out.
Yeah, although, actually, interestingly, we had an off-air discussion about how not all AAA games are equal, basically.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
True.
And that just because something's full price does not mean that they are all of the same scale. Because I think that it said in this article, and I'm basically referencing gamesindustry.biz and a Video Game Chronicle article as well. Again, links as always over in the show notes at PlayersToo.com. But I think that this Firewalk studio has like less than 100 staff, so it's not like a huge studio or anything like it's not Naughty Dog, But it will be very interesting to see what comes out of this game. Ultimately, this game is almost certainly not going to be for me, but I'm interested to see how this goes anyway. And that's a good pedigree that studio has, so hopefully they can nail it. All right, let's finish off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout out number 1, Nier Replicant version 1.22474487139. I'm so glad that I nailed that. Has come out this week. E.g., this is the Nier remake. It's currently sitting at an 87 on PS4, an 81 on Xbox One, and a 79 on PC. The remake seems basically to be pretty good, but by no means perfect. While it has improved from a technical standpoint, it does seem to suffer from some of the hang-ups of the original game, which, to be honest, if you're going all out and doing a full remake, you would like to think that those things would have been ironed out. But after falling completely in love with Nier Automata, I am almost certainly going to play this at some point, Lewis.
Yeah, I would say the people that I follow on Twitter or whatever that really loved the original seem to still really love this. I have seen it described as feeling a bit more like a remaster than a proper remake, which isn't really how it was being talked about before launch.
No.
But yeah, I think if you liked Nier Automata, if you have played the original Nier Replicant, it looks like it's absolutely ticking the boxes there.
Absolutely. Alright, shout out number 2. Live Gold will no longer be required to play free-to-play games on Xbox. This means free-to-play games are actually free, Lewis, which is fantastic news. This is actually a bit of catching up Xbox are doing, because free-to-play games have already been exempt from Switch Online and PlayStation Plus for quite a while now. But nonetheless, this is a very good move by Xbox, very pro-consumer, albeit a bit overdue.
Yep, about time. It's a strange thing for Xbox of all companies not to have sorted by now, given how good that they are with this type of thing usually. This all came about from the backlash of them trying to put prices up, but good that we got here eventually.
Alright, let's shout out number 3. The latest iOS update has finally allowed for native support of PlayStation 5 and Series X controllers on Apple devices. The 14.5 update allows you to connect controllers from the Bluetooth settings. However, in a very Apple move, Lewis, their own press release for this update did not mention this feature, because Apple basically do not want you connecting anything to their devices that wasn't made by them. Considering we might be getting xCloud and Stadia and Luna and maybe whatever the hell PlayStation is doing on iOS devices pretty soon, this seems like a pretty good move indeed, I would say.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see it in action. I might try to hook up my DualSense to my phone later and just see what it's like.
Yeah, I'm totally going to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as well, like if it runs with Apple Arcade games like Fantasian or whatever else, it could be quite a good way of playing it. I do find still touchscreen controls aren't the best always. Some games are great at it, but being able to connect up a proper handset would be fantastic, so might do it.
Absolutely. All right, and final shout out number 4. We got more details from Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart this week. We got some more gameplay, we got some more story details, but Lewis, by far and away the biggest and most important announcement from this trailer was that the lady Ratchet's name is Rivet, and we now know that, and that's the most important thing. In all seriousness, I think that this game continues to look fantastic. There will also be a state of play dedicated to the new game on Thursday, which is when this podcast comes out, so dear listener, you very well might know even more about the game than we do now. I will say that I think that the date of this state of play is stepping on the toes of Returnal and Housemarque a little bit, because Returnal comes out literally the next day after this state of play. And we know that there have been some early impressions of Returnal, and we know that they have been mostly positive, which is a very, very good sign. But we will wait until next week to discuss Returnal. I'm sure a lot more when the game is actually out next week.
Yeah, I thought the Ratchet and Clank trailer was fantastic. I think it looks really, really beautiful, and there were some stories dropping today just from the devs themselves, kind of talking about having played the game in full now, and just saying it looks absolutely stunning throughout. I've seen a clip going around as well of an entire world or a level that seems to load in just in the space of time that it takes Ratchet to swing his wrench, which is kind of stunning. I'll send you that off air later on.
God, that is wild.
Because it's really impressive. And yeah, I do agree, it's funny timing with Returnal, but I guess they're slightly different markets. Maybe the state of play will talk about Returnal. I mean, you could imagine that they might do a final kind of story trailer in there or something just to get some last minute sales, but those early impressions were way, way better than I was expecting, so I'm quite keen to see reviews come out in the next, I mean, they should be due in the next day or two. So
I believe actually the embargo is the 29th, so the day before. PlayStation are a bit shitty with this, to be honest.
Yep.
But that will also be the day that this podcast comes out. So, dear listeners, you might know way more about Returnal than we do as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time for a beer, and then we'll be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is the results of the DICE Awards 2021, and thus the results of our predictions list that we done. Oh god, it must have been last month now. It was ages ago.
I think it was in late February when the nominations came out, so yeah, it was a while back now.
It was a while back now. These predictions seem foreign to me somehow, but yeah. Anyway, for those of you not familiar, me and Lewis generally have 2 bets a year on Game Awards. We normally do the Game Awards, a bet on that, and we do a bet on the DICE Awards as well. And the loser has to compete a gaming challenge of some sort set by the winner. I won the Game Awards this year, and I have set Lewis the challenge to complete Bloodborne at some point before the next Game Awards. We will see who wins this, and another challenge will be set, Lewis.
Right, well, indeed, yes.
So let's get stuck in, starting with Outstanding Achievement in Animation.
So the nominees for this were Spiritfarer, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and the winner was The Last of Us Part 2.
And your boy Mark here predicted The Last of Us Part 2, and Lewis, you predicted Ori.
I did pick Ori, yeah. Great game, well animated, but yeah, hard to look past how good The Last of Us is.
Yeah, it really is. To be honest with you, had it went to Ori, that would have been lovely, but unfortunately in the face of The Last of Us, I don't really see how you could not give it to be completely honest. Next up after that was Outstanding Achievement in Art Direction, Lewis.
Yep, so the nominees for this were Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, The Last of Us Part 2, Hades, and the winner, which was Ghost of Tsushima.
And your boy Mark Lewis has got the Ghost of Tsushima again. He's sprung out to a 2-0 lead. You went for Hades in this one, Lewis.
Yeah, and I think they were robbed there, quite frankly. I mean, Ghost of Tsushima...
Well, wait until we get through this and you might not think that.
Yeah, Ghost of Tsushima is beautiful, but Hades' art direction is next level. But there you go.
Well, very different styles, we will say. I put it this way, if it went to Hades, I wouldn't have been surprised. No. Next up after that, Outstanding Achievement in Character, Lewis.
Yep, so the nominees for this were Ellie from The Last of Us Part 2 and Abby from The Last of Us Part 2, Zagreus from Hades, Eivor from Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and the winner, which was Miles Morales from Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Now, we both went for Abby on this, and I think that we would probably both have had Miles Morales quite low down that list, actually, of picks. I think Miles Morales is a fantastic character, actually, but I'm not sure if I was given an award for Outstanding Achievement in Character, I would necessarily have went there. Personally, I would have had Abby, Ellie, probably Zagreus from Hades as well, but at the end of the day, Miles Morales is a great character, and I'm not really complaining about it too much.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. Yeah, it is a great character and a great game, but not the top of that list for me at all, no.
After that list, outstanding achievement in original music composition.
Nominees here were The Pathless, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Little Orpheus, Carrion, and the winner, which was Ghost of Tsushima.
A bit surprised by this. It's not a game I necessarily associated with original music composition, you know. I went for Ori in this one, you went for The Pathless. Bit of a surprise.
A little bit. I mean, looking at it back now, I'm kind of like, well, there was one huge game here against a lot of smaller games, but
yeah,
I do remember the music from Ghost because it felt authentically, traditionally Japanese. But
oh yeah, it was good. It was. I'm not trying to disparage it at all. It was fantastic. It's just not the first thing I think about when I think about Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, and I'm just not sure that any of those games massively jump out. I picked The Pathless because Austin Wintory worked on it, and it does have nice music. You know, Ori definitely has nice music as well, but none of them, including Ghost, I'm like, oh, that is a memorable game soundtrack or anything like that, you know?
Quite frankly, the fact that Doom Eternal isn't in there, which had better music than all of them, I would argue, was a travesty. Anyway, Lewis, next up was Outstanding Achievement in Audio Design.
It is, yeah, and another one that Doom Eternal should possibly have been in, but wasn't.
Yep.
Your nominees here were Sackboy: A Big Adventure, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, The Last of Us Part 2, Dreams, and again, the winner was Ghost of Tsushima.
So we both went for The Last of Us Part 2 here. I'm quite surprised at this because in terms of audio design, The Last of Us Part 2 was incredible. Ghost of Tsushima was very, very good as well, to be clear, but man, I really think that should have went to The Last of Us Part 2, honestly.
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of an oversight to me as well. I mean, there's things about Ghost of Tsushima's audio design that I liked, but there's definitely things that I wasn't as keen on, in the same way that there were some things about how it dealt with visuals and wayfinding and stuff that I found a bit annoying at times. That is in my mind for Ghost of Tsushima's its audio design as well, but I mean, a strong bunch of nominees there again.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't begrudge Ghost of Tsushima. Fantastic game, fantastic audio design, frankly. I just didn't think it was quite as good as The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
Next up, Lewis, Outstanding Achievement in Story.
And your nominees here were Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, Hades, Ghost of Tsushima, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, and the winner, The Last of Us Part 2.
For me, and I know a lot of people will disagree with this, but this couldn't have went any other way. Like, I don't understand how you could have possibly have given this to anything else, to be completely honest. Kentucky Route Zero, for me, was a very, very weird and strong contender. But for me, Story, Last of Us Part 2, all the way, all day, frankly.
Yeah, there's absolutely no contest there for me. As good as all of these games might be, and I've never played 13 Sentinels, and that is another one of these surprise inclusions in a lot of these kind of narrative award categories across the last year. But
yeah, it makes me really want to play it.
Yeah, and I've heard really good things about its story, but The Last of Us Part 2 told an incredible story and told it in a really incredible way for me, which that is the thing, or one of the things that really mark it out as the best game of last year, in my mind at least.
Well, we'll see what the DICE Awards have to say about that pretty soon. Yeah. But next up is Outstanding Technical Achievement.
Your nominees here were Microsoft Flight Simulator, Mario Kart Live, The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and the winner, which was Dreams, Mark.
This is fantastic to see, not only because I picked Dreams, but I just love to see this game getting some sort of recognition, because I genuinely think that although it's not a game for me, it's nothing that I'm ever really going to engage with at all. I think as a technical achievement and as just an interesting game that exists in the world, it is awesome. Like, I really do, and I'm very, very happy to see this awarded. You went for Flight Sim. I could easily have seen it going that way as well, because folk loved that game, and in and of itself, an incredible technical achievement.
Yeah, I mean, I partly picked it because it had done well at the Game Awards, and I had changed off of my predictions for that in certain cases, so Dreams feels like a surprise one to me, and not that it should be a surprise at all, because it is obviously a huge, outstanding technical achievement, but I just kind of thought that people had moved on from it. It feels in the kind of narrative that it kind of came and went and never really landed, so I think this is really great that they awarded it to Dreams in this case, because it shows that devs and the people working in the industry really actually do think it was a great achievement, and that's fantastic to hear.
Absolutely is. Next up was Action Game of the Year, Lewis.
Your nominees were Neo 2, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, Half-Life Alyx, Doom Eternal, and the very deserved winner, Hades.
Yeah, you went for Hades in this one. I went for Half-Life Alyx. I think I was trying to be a wee bit clever there, frankly. But yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to argue with Hades in this category, isn't it?
Yeah, really strong contest there again. A lot of good games, but yeah, great to see Hades come out on top.
Next up was Adventure Game of the Year.
Your nominees were Ori and the Will of the Wisps, The Last of Us Part 2, Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and the winner was Ghost of Tsushima.
And you went for Ghost of Tsushima, Liz. I went for The Last of Us Part 2 again. I think that this one sort of split us a little bit because we were like, is The Last of Us Part 2 really an adventure game? Because it is linear, frankly, whereas Ghost of Tsushima is much more open world, of course. But yeah, takes it home, Liz. Point for you.
Yeah, a good point to earn there. Strong category, but really glad to see Ghost take it.
Absolutely. Kentucky Route Zero. I mean, if that's an adventure game, anything's an adventure game as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, pretty odd category that altogether.
All right, Liz. Family Game of the Year.
So here your nominees were Sackboy: A Big Adventure, Fall Guys: Ultimate Knockout, Dreams, Astro's Playroom, and sort of the inevitable winner, really, Animal Crossing.
Absolutely, the inevitable winner. So inevitable, in fact, that we both picked it.
Yeah, it would have been a travesty in this year of all years not to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. How could it have went to anything else? Astro's Playroom, absolutely sensational game, particularly if you have a strong connection to PlayStation. Dreams, again, fantastic technical achievement. Fall Guys as well certainly had its moments, and I'm sure Sackboy's fantastic as well, but to give that to anything else other than Animal Crossing, particularly last year, would have been fucking criminal. Next up was Fighting Game of the Year.
So your nominees here, as if they mattered, were Them's Fighting Herds, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, EA Sports UFC 4, and the winner, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate.
I mean, it's head and shoulders above the competition.
Yeah.
I don't really know what to say. No. There was only ever one choice here. We both chose it, and we were both right.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that game might have been won by the greatest margin. I reckon that there might have been so few votes for everything else that might have been in like the 80th percentile or something like that of actual amount of votes for it in that category, because it is just so much better than the rest. I'm not even saying that some of these other games aren't great. Like, I know that a lot of people like the Grand Blue games. UFC is obviously a particular thing. Them's Fighting Herds looks absolutely mad and seems to be there making up the numbers. I'm going to be straight with you on this. But Mortal Kombat 11, outstanding game and fully deserves the win.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, listen, Racing Game of the Year.
Just 3 nominees in this category, and they were F1 2020, Dirt 5, and the winner, a little surprisingly maybe, was Mario Kart Live.
I think that this is one out of popularity, frankly, because I think that those two games are probably better than Mario Kart Live, and I know for a fact that the Formula 1 2020 game was probably one of the best Formula 1 games for quite a while, which is why both of us picked that, so we were both wrong in this category. But I mean, fair play to you, do you know what I mean? Mario Kart Live is certainly an interesting game, I will say that much.
Damning with faint praise there, yeah. I mean, it does.
Yeah, sort of.
It does feel to me like it's been picked because the people voting on this are more into Mario than they are into racing games. And I'm just looking at the nominees here and thinking they're both Codemasters games. They've both been taken in now by EA. EA will be fucking desperate to win this award in future. They've bought up the entire stable.
Alright, let's role-playing Game of the Year.
Your nominees here were Yakuza Like a Dragon, Wasteland 3, Persona 5 Royal, Cyberpunk 2077, and your winner, Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Very difficult to see it going any other way, to be completely honest with you. Persona 5 Royal, by the way, could easily have taken this award in my opinion. You know how much I love Persona now, Liz, after my, 125 hours that
Something
I played
like that, yeah.
not that long ago. Again, Yakuza Like a Dragon, big love from that game for fans of it as well. Cyberpunk, we all know how that went. I don't think it could have really went any other way than Final Fantasy VII Remake, and frankly, it totally deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, a beloved game, and I agree, like, anything there was going to challenge it, it would have been Persona, which had already been out before, and
yeah, so it was a bit funny that, isn't it? Like, I think that if Persona 5 Royal had come out in the year where Persona 5, the original Persona 5 had come out, then maybe we'd be having a different conversation here, but the fact that it is a sort of second coming of that game, if you like, you know. Although, Final Fantasy VII Remake's a remake, so, you know.
that's true, but a little different.
Alright, let's sports game of the year.
Nominees were PGA Tour 2K21, NBA 2K21, MLB The Show 20, FIFA 21, and your winner, which was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Well, there's a whole bunch of annualized games there that are basically uninteresting, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, so I think that this went to the correct nomination, and we both picked it as well, Lewis. This one felt pretty inevitable to me.
Again, it's one of these ones that you can kind of predict just based on who's voting for it, that these sports games obviously have enormous fan bases, but not necessarily within the game development community or whatever, whereas Tony Hawk's is a really big deal that came back this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Lewis. Strategy/simulation game of the year.
Nominees were Per Aspera, Monster Train, Desperados 3, Crusader Kings 3, and your winner, which was Microsoft Flight Simulator.
We both went for Flight Simulator here, Lewis. Famously, Lewis, Flight Simulator was your downfall at the Game Awards, but we've both chose it here. I still don't really understand why Microsoft Flight Simulator is in the same category as Desperados 3. I don't really know what those games are competing with one another for, but here we have it. Microsoft Flight Simulator is a fantastic technical achievement. For what it is utterly brilliant, frankly. So yeah, I think it thoroughly deserves this award.
Yeah, like you say, pretty bizarre categorization. Desperados is brilliant. Crusader Kings 3 was really well reviewed. But yeah, the technical achievement that was Flight Simulator and how well it simulates the world, it's hard to overlook. But yeah, in future I would like to see that category shared out a little better.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Alright, skipping over the virtual reality games. Again, we didn't make predictions for these categories just because we're not VR gamers at all. Quite frankly, they would have both been taken by Half-Life Alyx, and we would have predicted that anyway just because Half-Life Alyx has changed the game in terms of VR anyway, so it was a little bit pointless. And also skipping over Mobile Game of the Year as well because, again, we're just not plugged in there. So our next award, Lewis, is going to be an outstanding achievement for an independent game.
Yep, and your nominees were Noita, Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, If Found, Coffee Talk, and your winner, Hades.
I mean, it couldn't really have went any other way. We both predicted it as well. Considering the amount of nominations that Hades has had, the love that it's had, how it's scored with critics, how it's been lauded by gamers, it couldn't have went any other way.
No, absolutely. Strong list of games, really interesting games. Obviously, I particularly love Kentucky Route Zero, but it was Hades' year. There's no doubt it was winning this award.
Absolutely. I knew when we were making the predictions as well, I knew you wanted to say Kentucky Route Zero, but I think your head beat out your heart on that occasion and you went for Hades, so well done.
Exactly.
Alright, Alice, online game of the year.
Nominees were Tetris Effect Connected, Ghosts of Tsushima, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and your winner, which was Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout. Which
Mark predicted, Lewis. And Lewis went for Animal Crossing. Now, I have to say, in the year of 2020, there were few more important games I think than Animal Crossing. I genuinely believe that. However, in this specific category, online game of the year, and while Animal Crossing is most definitely an online game, I'm not really sure it's thought about in those terms. It's not really... The online component of Animal Crossing is not what makes it special, whereas the online component of Fall Guys is, and that as well had a huge moment in 2020. So I am over the moon to see that this has been awarded, because I really think that that was also an important game in 2020 as well. Not as important as Animal Crossing, but I think if it was going to win one of these categories, this is probably the one for it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do agree, even though I picked Animal Crossing, and I'll come back onto that in a wee second, I do agree that it is the more online game and it's the more impressive kind of online offering out of those two. And fantastic for Fall Guys to win and be recognised over games including Call of Duty and Ghost of Tsushima, even though that isn't predominantly an online game. It's just really impressive that something of the scale of Fall Guys, and that could have been quite a weird idea that might have just bounced, that has come out on top. I re-listened to our predictions earlier today, Mark, and this was a category where I basically went for Animal Crossing because you had already picked Fall Guys and we were debating that at the time. And actually,
you're trying to make it interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And and I think that that's important for this kind of thing, but in my heart of hearts I know that Fall Guys is the better online game, but I was at the time saying it would be a shame if Animal Crossing only won family game, considering what it represented last year. And not to spoil what's coming up, but that is what has happened.
Alright, listen, next one, outstanding achievement in game design.
Nominees here were Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, The Last of Us Part 2, Half-Life Alyx, Ghost of Tsushima, and your winner, which was Hades.
Absolutely incredible achievement. This is now the meat and potato Big Boys Awards that we're on now. Hades is taking it. We both went for The Last of Us. And you know what, Lewis? Let's do the next couple of awards in a row here, because I think we're about to see a pattern. The next category was Outstanding Achievement in Game Direction.
The nominees were The Last of Us Part 2, Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, Half-Life Alyx, Ghost of Tsushima, and your winner, Mark, was Hades.
And we both went for The Last of Us Part 2 again. And Lewis, why don't we just do Game of the Year while we're at this, will we?
Yeah, the big one. So your nominees for Game of the Year were Animal Crossing New Horizons, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and your winner, Mark, was Hades.
Absolutely, and we both went for The Last of Us Part 2 again, and Hades won again. And you know what? I don't begrudge it at all. I absolutely don't begrudge it at all. I think that Hades is a real gamer's game, do you know what I mean? And I don't mean that in any disparaging way whatsoever. Like, I really, really don't. And I'm not going to say it deserves it more than The Last of Us Part 2, because I genuinely think The Last of Us Part 2 is probably a better game, but I certainly don't begrudge it. And the fact that it has walked away from these awards with 5 awards, including Game of the Year, Game Direction, Game Design. It's also won Indie Game, and it's won Action Game of the Year, which are 5 seriously heavy-hitting categories, 5 fiercely contested categories as well. A lot of great games in here, and for them to come away with 5 awards, incredible for a game of that scope. Ghost of Tsushima won 4, and Half-Life Alyx and The Last of Us Part 2 won 2 apiece as well. But Hades, very much the star of the show here, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely cleaned up, and it is great to see it. It's a game that people fell in love with. It is a game that basically elevates Supergiant to be one of certainly the premier indie developers working at the moment. They're absolutely nailing it with their games. We've obviously played Bastion and Transistor on the show before, and they were both phenomenal little games, but Hades just seems to have taken the next step for that studio, and to beat out The Last of Us Part 2, as I say, has become the most awarded game in history, I believe, and there's some other absolutely enormous, to beat something like Final Fantasy VII Remake as well, one of the most...
Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and Animal Crossing, one of the most beloved franchise in the world ever. Hades has beat the lot, and fucking fair play to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely fair play. Yeah. Jesus Christ. But Lewis, to the scores of our predictions, and as you already know, I have won 11-9.
Yep.
Yes.
Very tight.
2 in a row.
Very tight margin.
Yeah,
again, literally, if I had put Fall Guys and you had put Animal Crossing for Online Game of the Year, we'd have drawn. So, it's pretty fine margins altogether.
Ah, well, nail up. Still won.
Gracious as ever.
Anyway, so that means I get to set you another challenge for the year, Lewis. So before the DICE Awards roll round in 2022, I would like for you to complete up to the E ending in Nier Automata. Now that sounds longer than it is. I think that the E ending is actually 4, so you have to do A, B, then you do C or D, and then you do E. So yeah, there you go.
Fair enough. I knew Nier was coming eventually, and I've played a bit of it. I played a bit of it with you before and enjoyed it fine. It didn't really feel like exactly my type of thing at that point, but people have fallen absolutely in love with it over the last few years. It is partly just the crazy, stupid in my eyes, multiple ending thing that puts me off a bit. The feeling that you play it through once and you've not actually done it and you have to just do it again and again.
Well, Liz, I will tell you this right now. The A and the B endings are basically identical, so you do have to play the game twice.
I struggle to get on board with that, but that seems to just be the trick of the game, the charm of it that some people seem to like, so we'll see how I get on with that.
What I will say is that I think that you will be far more interested in the story being told, or the way that the story is being told, probably more accurately, than the actual gameplay itself. Yep. But I think that it will ultimately appeal to you. I'm hoping anyway, because it is truly fantastic and I love it. So yeah. And I hope you love it too. Genuinely I do. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really, 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 really helps us out. I know I say it twice a week, every week, but it does not become less important on a weekly basis. So if you could take that 5 seconds to give us 5 stars and a review, again, it really helps us out. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. You're an absolute legend to us. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is FTL Faster Than Light. I've still not started it, Lewis. I got into Resident Evil 7. I said that I would start it and I didn't do it. I'm sad.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it this week. I've got very, very little left of Resident Evil 7 and then it'll be straight on to this.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I meant to start it last week and just basically prioritised getting outside more. It's been too nicer for the last couple of weeks, so it is definitely time to put some hours into that game because I don't think it's going to be super short. I think it might be a little tricky, but I'm still really excited for it. I will probably end up playing it a bit alongside Soulstorm, but I will be focusing on it later in the week for sure.
Also, my plumbing exploded, so I'm going to be using that as an excuse.
Exactly.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.